This is 22-year-old Jacob Martinez, aka Jake the Muss. He's spent the last 12 months preparing for the Australian National Bodybuilding Championships. He's been training up to 3 times a day, 6 days a week. His diet has been just as gruelling. Restrictions include no flour, sugar, salt, fruit or dairy. Flavour and fat, pretty much out.
Nothing tastes as good as looking good feels. When you're on stage and you look down, you got abs, you got legs, you got lines, and you're just like, yeah, this is worth it, Because you see a lot of people around and everything. Like you see all the foods, like, oh, I really want to eat that. And then look at the people who are eating it, and you're like, oh, I don't want to look like that.
And he's sacrificed more than just food.
It'll be a while if I compete again, because it is a lot of stress, physically and emotionally, and with other relationships as well. It's kind of hard because you don't really get much of a life coming into it. So and that sort of affects a few people around you.
But Jake says the pain is worth the prize.
It sort of pays off in the end and everything, because not many people get to look like we look like.
Girl, look at that body. Girl, look at that body. Girl, look at that body. I work out.
Fitness model and bodybuilder Andre Davids has won multiple bodybuilding competitions and appeared on the cover of numerous magazines. But he doesn't believe that you need to sacrifice your life to get the results.
They think that to achieve what they aspire to, the ultimate physique, they have to sacrifice all else. And if that was the case, I wouldn't do it. Because for me, it's just part of who I am and what I do. Don't get me wrong, I do want to have the best physique that I can have, but I also want to have a life and be able to enjoy things. And most people assume that because of the way I look or what I've achieved or etc., that I must spend hours and hours in the gym. But the reality is I use a fortnightly cycle. Over a fortnight, I'm in the gym no more than 9 days a week. So it's a 4-day split over the fortnight, and I'm in the gym for no more than 45 minutes to an hour.
However you get there, more and more young guys aspire to look cut like Andre and Jacob. Recently deceased amateur bodybuilder turned internet sensation Z's is a case in point. His Facebook page has over 124,000 likes.
The pursuit is not necessarily amongst the majority, I would say, is not to become the massive freaks. And I think that is perhaps why Z's was popular. Nearly everything is all about having a more aesthetic physique, and I guess for the younger guys it's about appealing to girls. And I think that is more now viewed about having the six-pack.
Do I find men attractive who go to the gym? I appreciate a really nice figure. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be bulky or really defined. I just think that guys who work out and take care of themselves are attractive, yeah.
I don't like the body. There's a point where it's nice and toned and muscly, but then when it looks like they spend a lot of time at the gym, I don't really like that.
Look, a lot of guys that go to the gym, I think, can be a little bit egotistical, and they seem to work the upper body and not the lower body, so I find that very unattractive.
I'd rather someone that takes care of themselves, takes pride in how they look, but isn't over them, up themselves or over the top with it. Yeah.
So the girls seem to worry that guys who spend too much time in the gym are vain. Psychologist and body image expert Dr. Stuart Murray thinks it's also about peer approval.
A lot of guys seek approval from other men more than women, because if they are threatened in their masculinity, I think sort of a man has a greater sort of ability to affirm another man's masculinity. So for a lot of my patients, if they say they work on their biceps, they would rather get a compliment from another man than a woman, because it seemingly has more power in reaffirming their masculinity if it comes from a man. So with the Ziz thing, I've never met Ziz, but I did watch a few of his videos, and I noticed that there was a lot of sort of male bonding and compliments and things like that. So that would fit with what I see in my patients too.
The patients Stuart sees are at the extreme end of the spectrum. For others, though, the benefits are more than just looking good and picking up.
My time management is insane. I've noticed that, how I'm always I'm preparing, like I'm always on time, I'm always organised, I'm driven now more because like if you're driven for something for 12 months, you know, you can sort of transfer that to other factors of your life as well.
For me, the lifestyle is a combination of a whole array of different things. It's not just about how I look, it's about how I feel, it's about energy, it's about which to a large degree, people always ask me, you know, what's the key, how do I get results? And anyone who's looked at my Facebook page will know that I'm a big advocate for good nutrition.
But many are using unhealthy methods and going for the quick fix to achieve the aesthetic.
But you know, some people come in here into the natural shows like the AMB and the IMBA and stuff, and they're all juiced up and everything. Like before we started, and I saw the Sara, there's a Australian Sports Anti-Doping Association. Like when you see those guys at comps, you're just like, oh sweet. It's always good when they come because hopefully they can pick out a couple of people.
I've been exposed to it. I've been around it. I've known numerous people who've used it. I've seen the positives and I've seen the negatives of it. Have I considered? Absolutely.
I think we fall victim to these marketing campaigns promising instant gratification, where if you take this product you're sort of immediately going to have this wonderful physique, and so we get sucked in, and I think when we're all dissatisfied with something we want a quick fix most of the time, and if there's a promise of this sort of instant gratification, lots of us fall for it.
And nearly every single person I've spoken to who's done it has always said, I'm only ever going to do it once. They never do it once because they get the bug. They take it and they see these great results. They feel invincible. They feel bulletproof. They're strong. They look in the mirror. They look good. Then they lose it all and they go, well, I'll just take more next time.
And there's so many dangers of doing this kind of stuff as well, not only with the dangers of steroid abuse, which I think are pretty widely publicised, but the dangers of, for example, over sort of protein consumption. Renal functioning goes really, really downhill quite quickly, and lots of guys die from just eating too much protein at the exclusion of other things. And it's not widely publicised, or even things like quality of life sufferers, and these guys are much, much more likely to commit suicide than other guys, even guys with depression. So there's lots of problems that aren't known about with these people.
But where is all this pressure coming from in the first place? Paul Dillon of Drug and Alcohol Research and Training Australia thinks the media is to blame.
I think certainly there's a great deal of pressure on young people to look a certain way. You have to look at the movies on television, even in music videos, and people have a certain type of body. So there's an expectation of looking a certain way.
We're seeing the rates of body dissatisfaction has tripled in the last 30 years for guys, and I think it's because of media pressure. So we're seeing lots of guys now selling things like cars or watches, products completely unrelated to their bodies, with semi-naked men on the product. So we're just exposed to lots of really, really muscular guys.
So it looks like a lot of these images in the media are really affecting a lot of guys.
Absolutely, it's a large portion of self-esteem. Yeah. It's that whole thing about they've got to look good compared to their mates, or they've got to impress the girl, or get ready for Stereosonics or whatever they're doing. So I guess there's an element of perceived pressure on them to fit into what's they consider the norm.
Look, it was really interesting. I think certainly in the first study I did there, we had quite a high percentage of gay men there, and many of the gay men were men who had earlier in their life had been, you know, the skinny boy who was picked on and had moved to having this quite not perfect body, but the body they were after. Interestingly, though, you know, when it came to the heterosexual sample, very, very different story. I mean, some of these guys had the most phenomenal body dysmorphia. I mean, met one man who was the hugest guy I've ever met in my life, absolutely enormous, but he would never take his shirt off at the beach because he thought people would laugh at him because he was too skinny, and he was enormous.
I think they come to define themselves through their body, particularly now in an era where there's sort of greater parity between the sexes, and so I think a lot of men feel threatened in their masculinity, which they kind of emphasise by aiming to have the super masculine body, which is muscular. So I think it sort of makes them feel more of a man and things like that.
There's probably an element of truth, but even for myself, as much as I like to maintain a certain perspective on it, and I am very comfortable with the physique that I've built. It's taken me a long time to get here, but I'm happy with it. But I still want more. So is that viewed as body dysmorphia, or is it someone who has a drive to achieve constant and never-ending improvement?
It's easy to make sweeping generalisations, but it's not an industry that can be taken on appearances alone. There are a growing number of young guys who are willing to do whatever it takes to turn themselves into their image of a god. There are those with body image issues, insecurity about their masculinity, and steroid abuse. But there are also those who are just elite athletes, who are fit, healthy, and disciplined. So where do you draw the line?
I think it's sort of, you're right, elite sports people do need to make immense sacrifices. I think in terms of separating that from a psychological illness such as muscle dysmorphia, these guys will sort of look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm not big enough. And it's not usually oriented around performance, this is all aesthetic. So they won't often say, I can't bench press enough, they'll say, my chest isn't big enough. And that's a little delineation to make. I think the other thing is just the level of impairment it causes on your life. If you're sort of a dedicated sports person, that's great, but if you're a dedicated sports person and you're losing all your relationships because you can't do anything but lift weights, that might sort of be crossing the lines towards a problem.
I think with anything, it's all about moderation. So I don't think having the goal to achieve more is a bad thing. The obsession to achieve at the neglect of all else, I believe, is body dysmorphia.
For Jacob, though, it's been worth the sacrifice. But for now, he's glad it's done.
In about 3 hours, I'm going to be looking at some Danishes. You know, it's like, oh, some good Danishes. I really like Danishes, like the chocolate Danishes and stuff like that, like something. But then again, ice cream. Like I haven't had milk this year, so something like a milkshake, and even just like basic things. I haven't had bread this year, so Vegemite on toast or something, you know.
Junior men in the house. Well done, lads. Let's give them a cheer, folks, as they leave the stage. Unbelievable!
I'm sexy and I know it.